Well, guys, I officially have had my first tenant move out of my commercial property. What's up, guys? It's McKeown back again with another video this week, and unfortunately, we do have a vacancy situation at my new commercial property. Now, if you haven't been following my videos, or if you haven't followed kind of my investment portfolio and kind of tracked to where I am today, I'll give you guys a quick rundown. Now, in the summer of 2017, I bought my first investment property. It was a duplex with my VA loan. I continued to purchase properties after that, including a single family and then a fourplex in 2019, again with my VA loan. Now, that fourplex in 2019, I actually turned around at the end of 2021 and sold it. I used a 1031 exchange to roll that into this commercial property that I'm actually filming this video in and where I actually have my real estate company work out of. Now, on top of that, I didn't just sell my fourplex for a commercial building for my real estate company. I actually sold my fourplex for a 4-unit office space that's used for commercial use only. 2 of those units, 2 specifically, have been renovated and I use for my real estate company. Now, we have a tenant next door. Technically, we used to have 2 tenants next door, but in the 3rd unit, we have a tenant, and to be honest with you, I don't really understand or know what they do, but they pay rent, so hey, I'm happy. But I did have a tenant that's been in the 4th unit for I think about 6 years and decided that business wasn't going as well as planned. So within I think 3 months of even owning this commercial building, I already have a unit vacant. Now, the whole reason I'm making this video, and to be fully transparent with you guys, a lot of the content that I do make and that I put out for you guys is because a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, I'm learning for the first time. I'm applying a lot of what I necessarily may know and have learned over time, but this is my first commercial property. It's my first commercial vacancy, and it's a lot different than residential. Now, the intent here is to educate you guys, so maybe down the road, whether it be 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, if you do purchase a commercial property, you can remember back to this video, or you can remember if you continue to watch my videos that, hey, Casey's been through this and he did this and he learned from this, so I'm going to apply that in actually my life rather than go through all the issues and the struggles that he did. A lot of it for me is just learning as I go, but as I go and I learn from my mistakes, I'm going back and educating hopefully the folks on YouTube about what to do and what not to do. So first things first, I purchased this property at the end of January, if not the beginning of February of this year. Spent a couple months remodeling this unit and finally have my 2 units ready to go, and we're working out of here. But I knew from the get-go that the lease was terminating in May. Unfortunately, how residential works is you can't really show the property. I mean, maybe you can the last 30 days, but for the most part, you just stick a sign out, put it on the MLS. When that tenant moves out and you say, hey, you got a vacancy in here, have someone move in as soon as possible. Well, commercial's a little bit different. I can tell you guys, I put up a sign, or I put it on what would be the MLS or LoopNet for the commercial side of things, maybe 30 or 45 days before the lease actually ended, and I didn't get any interest. We're talking like no one showing, no one even reaching out, no one even curious about the unit. And this is a unit that pays me almost $2,200 a month. So you can imagine it's like an entire single family rental in a average neighborhood where I'm just having to stomach that $2,200 now if I don't have a tenant in place. So comparatively, residential to commercial, typically commercial takes a lot longer to lease. So for instance, if you've got a pretty busy rental market on the residential side that something may lease in, a couple weeks, I would expect a commercial property, and obviously it varies from location and size and amenities, but it could take a couple months to actually get a tenant in place for a commercial property versus a couple weeks when we're talking residential. Now, also on the residential side, typical leases run about a year. I was fortunate enough with my last gut job / remodel in the Fort Worth area that I got a tenant that actually was willing to do a 3-year long lease. There's some pros and cons to that, but the biggest pro for me was just with everything that I have going on, being able to put that on the back burner for 3 years and not have to think about it. As long as he continues to pay me rent, I'm super happy. But typically on the residential side, we're talking, a year lease. On the commercial side, a year lease is not standard. Maybe a year lease extension, but typically on the commercial side, they start out with 3-year leases, and then they can actually extend beyond that 3-year lease to an additional 3-year lease. So if you sign a new tenant in place, they could technically have the rights to that unit within some negotiations for up to 6 years, which is, honestly incredible. The fact that you don't have to worry about a tenant moving out. And also, I can tell you the commercial side of things, I may be leaning a little bit more towards more often than not. And the reason being is because you're dealing with businesses. You're dealing with people where they come come to every single day, and it's their livelihood. Usually most business owners, do well for themselves, and they're gonna make sure that they're paying the most important thing every single month, and that's rent. Now, on the flip side, when we're talking about residential, now, yes, rent's important, and people tend to pay rent, but if they don't have the money to pay rent because they don't have any income because they lost their job, they just stop paying rent, and you've got to stomach it, and you've got to worry about, evicting them and so on and so forth. Now, on the commercial side, haven't had to do this yet, knock on wood here, but as far as evictions go, you can act pretty quick. 5th day, if that's the notice, you give them a notice. If they don't pay rent, then you just change the locks. It's not their house. It's not where they come home to every single night. It's where they go to work every single day, but if they don't pay rent, lock them out and get a new tenant. So initially, when I saw the lease was ending at the end of May and not getting any traction, I got really nervous. I started asking other fellow commercial real estate agents, like, hey, what's standard? What's normal in this market? To be honest with you, the commercial side's kind of going up because everyone's headed back to the office, but everything changed in the matter of an hour. One day I had someone reach out. It was 2 individuals that partnered together, and they own a med spa, and the majority of what they've been doing, it's been from home. Now, you can imagine having clients come to your home and doing massages, or clients coming to your home and doing any kind of, facial or manicures or whatever it may be, is not really enjoyable if you're doing that at your house. You want an actual commercial building where you work out of. So lo and behold, I actually had a tenant not technically sign. I think we're gonna probably sign here in the next day or 2. I'm headed out of town at the end of the week, but by the end of this week, I will have a tenant in place for a premium rent, which is actually more than I was getting previously, signed for 3 years, as well as an inclusion where if they want to, they can renew that lease for 3 years, as I mentioned before, for an additional 3 years. Now, another thing that's great about commercial is every single year, you're obviously going to be designated a certain amount of rent. I'll give you my example. Right now, rent for the first year is gonna be $22.25 a month. And I'll get into exactly where that number came from, but $22.25 actually increases to $22.75 that second year. And then the following year, it actually goes up to $23.25. So every single year, I'm actually going up a little bit in rent. Now, it does, kind of accommodate potential inflation. It does also accommodate a little bit better cash flow every single year for me. And then that 3 additional years is not even set at a certain amount. That additional 3 years can technically be at market rent. So if for whatever reason the commercial development in my local area just absolutely tanks, or vice versa, if it goes absolutely incredibly higher than expected, that next 3 years I could jump rent up to $2,500 or $3,000. Now, that's not realistic, but it does give me the option to kind of make sure that I'm not signing someone for 6 years at a below market rent and just allowing them to lease my unit for far below market. So the last tenant was some kind of psychologist. He paid rent on time, was very cordial, very respectful, and honestly a great tenant. But me personally, I don't have a ton of use for a psychologist 2 doors down. So I'm excited with the idea of having a med spa. Me personally being someone that enjoys getting massages, to be able to go 2 doors down and actually be able to utilize one of my tenants' services. Now, the individual in the 3rd unit, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I have no idea what they do, but at least we'll have a med spa in the 4th unit that, again, I can go down and use, or even the girls or women on my team can utilize if they so desire. Now, one stipulation when it came to this tenant was they wanted me to get rid of the carpet. And you can probably understand why you want to get rid of carpet. If you're dealing with wet material that's going to be dropping onto carpet, it's just a lot safer to have a floor that's a little bit more sturdy when it comes to getting wet. So we're actually going to get LVP or luxury vinyl plank installed similar to the flooring in this unit, and that LVP should be installed here in the next day or 2. Also, the great thing about commercial is not all the time is the unit set up exactly how you want it. Now, in this particular case, it's a pretty easy tenant. All they requested was new flooring or new luxury vinyl plank. But, if someone came up and wanted, the entire place just gutted and redone, not all of that cost is actually going to be incurred from the landlord or from me. So they could actually improve my property, the tenant, and I don't even necessarily have to pay all or any of the expense. Now, in this case, in terms of removal of the floor and installation of the floor, again, it's a pretty small improvement. It's gonna run me about $5,000, maybe $5,500. Now, that $5,500, typically, if I was a landlord of a, residential rental property and I wanted to improve my property, I would replace the floors. But guess what? No tenant's going to be paying for new floors. On the commercial side of things, I actually negotiated half of that cost instead of paying $5,000, instead of paying close to $6,000, Tenant's actually going to cover half of that, and I spread it over the course of that first 3 parts or 3 years of their lease. So yes, I'm upfronting the entire cost up front, but I'm actually accruing it back in my tenant's lease, or half, over the next 3 years. So yes, commercial is definitely intriguing in some aspects. I think the biggest question moving forward with my commercial building is truly what is the appreciation going to look like as we move forward with this commercial property. I think probably the more on the residential side, you're going to see more appreciation, but maybe that's just simply from my experience and having been investing in rental properties over the last 5 years. And honestly, I shouldn't say all of my net worth, but a large portion of what I actually have in my net worth today is from the appreciation and value in the rental properties that I bought. I'm curious to see what that looks like moving forward. But with that being said, guys, I appreciate all of the support. If you do have any questions about purchasing a commercial property, regarding commercial leases, or anything on the commercial side of things, I'm definitely not the expert, but the day in and the day out of continuing to deal with commercial properties, including my own, as well as commercial leases, I'm definitely learning more and more every day. So if you do have any questions, guys, make sure to leave them down in the comment section below, or reach out to me on Instagram. I'd love to help in any way I possibly can. I appreciate the support, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help, and stay tuned for the next video.